One of the more defining and tragic moments in our area's history are the fires of 1918. Most of us know some of the history. Some of us know neighbors, friends, or relatives who had loved ones who were lost or who were deeply affected or scarred for a lifetime by the fires. We recently commemorated the 91st anniversary of this dark and horrific chapter of our past. In the first of a three-part series, the Town Crier will honor the memories of those lost or scarred by the tragedy. In the first part, Harry Kasprzak tells us, until now, an untold story passed along to him by his mother about how she actually survived.
So at the time, in 1918, my mother's family consisted of Father Steve, he was 31 years old. The mother, Anna, Mom Nikki Jurek, she was 33, and there was 4 girls. The oldest one was Mary, she was 6. My mother was 4. Vicky was 2. And Margaret, she was a baby of only 3 months old. Well, this is a story, a continuation of a story that first came out in the 1918 Survivors book that was published by the Moose Lake Historical Society. And there was a related story on page 68 by Ida Jurek Olsen. And that interview was taken 22 years ago. And at that time, you know, during the fire, she was thinking of Anna and her 4 girls, because she knew that they were home alone because Father Steve was out fighting fires. So we have the story of what happened to Anna and her 4 little girls. And this is the untold story. You'll be the first ones to hear of it today. It was told by my mother, Sophie Jurek Kasprzak, and her son, Harry. And this story, I got piece by piece over a period of about 10 years. And I finally got the ending to the story. And it's based on actual statements from fire survivors and memory of her at that time in her life. So we're going back to October 12, 1918. It's Split Rock Township. In fact, Split Rock Township Section 3 is where Jerome owns the land right now. This is where my grandparents had the farm. So I'll start off this story on Saturday morning. Her father, Steve, left home to answer the call to fight fires in the Ottumwa area. So that left them all alone. And that afternoon, because of the approaching fires, my mother gathered a trunk with some valuables and clothing and dragged it out of the house and away from the buildings. And then ran in and got the 4 girls and handfuls of blankets and headed out to an open field south of the house. And this is one thing that my mom always told me. It was amazing how clearly she remembers running out into that field with these sparks and embers being blown by the wind, burning their legs as they ran. The blankets covering the baby sister Margaret caught fire during their escape for safety, and it wasn't until later that my mother realized that Margaret was badly burned. And as they huddled together out there in that field, a man from out of nowhere with a horse and a wagon came with some water and splashed water on their blankets and kept them wet to prevent them from burning. The following morning, nothing remained of the homestead. All the buildings were gone, along with the trunk and personal items that the mother tried to save for future use. All the animals they had burnt to death. There was a few cows that survived, but they had to be destroyed. Another grave concern was Father Steve. He never returned the previous night from fighting the fires in the Ottumwa, as the others did. We're cold and hungry and confused about what happened. They headed south to the Ignatz Klieski farm, which Jerome mentioned didn't burn. And the ruins of that farm are now located just across the road from her, Josie Klieski has her home on County Road 12. There they found shelter in a dirt floor basement, and their first food, or first meal, they ate raw potatoes and rutabagas. And late that afternoon, they can't imagine the joy they felt when their father, Steve, came up the road to be reunited with their family. He survived somehow miraculously. No one will ever know how he survived, but he did return. Eventually, they boarded an evacuation train to Superior, where my sister, Margaret, was treated for her burns in a hospital. And they spent the winter there with relatives, Aunt Ben and Catherine Dushinsky. They eventually returned to the farm and rebuilt their lives. And that's the end of the story.